What is going on, everybody? In today's video, we are breaking down a 12-team full PPR mock draft from the 1.4 overall for the 2025 fantasy football season. We'll be rolling with one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end, two flex spots, and five bench spots for the purpose of today's mock draft. I'll be breaking down an overall strategy that I think will help you guys draft an amazing 2025 fantasy football team at this point in the offseason. I've been doing a video for every single draft selection, so we're landing at the 1.4 today, but I'll continue to get videos out for every single draft spot for 12-team leagues and 10-team leagues, so make sure that you guys stay posted. If you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here all year long. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you guys are into that, be sure to subscribe on the way in. Other than that, let's hop right into today's video. Let's get this mock rolling. Okay, so there are basically two different strategies from the 1.4 that I really like. One would be what I call like a bounce back strategy. And you essentially want to think of that type of strategy as coming out of the first, let's say, 6 rounds with 3 wide receivers and 3 running backs. If you draft a wide receiver in the first round, then you draft a running back in the second round, and then you just kind of keep that pattern going. But I think you could also look at it, like I just said, of coming out of the first 6 rounds with the 3 best available running backs, 3 best available wide receivers. But I think when you intentionally go from running back to wide receiver, or wide receiver to running back, back to back, it really just builds a really good overall roster that's consistent top to bottom. Let a good tight end fall to you, then go late round quarterback. And right now, the way things are looking, I think late round quarterback is completely fine this year, although generally speaking, I am personally okay with drafting tight ends kind of mid to late and drafting quarterbacks late overall. But I also, from the 1.4 at this point in the offseason, specifically really like a double hero running back build, because Bijan Robinson is typically lasting to the 1.4. Sometimes he will go at the 1.3 depending on who you're drafting with. I also really like Jahmyr Gibbs at the 1.4. I think he's completely okay to take if Justin Jefferson falls, which he's at the 1-1 tonight, which we're typically seeing Jamar Chase or Saquon Barkley off the board at the 1-1. But nonetheless, JJ is very difficult to pass up, right? But if you're sitting on the board and Bijan Robinson is here at the 1.4, there's just no way that I'm going to pass him, because we can either implement that bounce back strategy that I kind of went over. And you guys will hear me talk about that strategy a lot. I've already talked about it in 2 of the draft strategy videos that I've put out so far on this offseason, right? But I also think there's just a lot of really good value at running back in the second round. And we do see quite a few running backs gone here in the second round: Genty, Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, and Christian McCaffrey. I actually kind of prefer Josh Jacobs in this range, but I also really like Bucky Irving, So I'm completely fine with taking Bucky Irving. We're going to go a little double hero running back here. And for me personally, what that means is, we have that RB1, we have that RB2, and we have a ton of upside between the 2 players. I'm very high on Bucky going into 2025. A lot of people are, but he does have kind of his naysayers as well. And when I go double hero running back, I'm okay coming out of the first 6 rounds with 4 wide receivers and 2 running backs, because we have high top value at the running back position. So for me, I'm just going to go with the best available wide receiver on the board. We look at the tier here: Tyreek Hill, Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Scary Terry, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr. I think is in that tier as well. And I like Devontae Adams and Rashee Rice kind of breaking into that next tier, but I'll go for some upside here. Let's go with T. Higgins. I kind of prefer Higgins as a wide receiver too, because he has, throughout his career had some inconsistency in terms of playing time on the field, but in terms of average fantasy points per game, especially last year, he's still in that double-digit range and gives you a ton of upside. Tied to Joe Burrow, nothing wrong here with Higgins as a wide receiver 1. And like I said, I do like Rashee Rice in this tier as well. As we start to break into these 4th-round wide receivers, we got Metcalf here, who I think is fine. Cortland Sutton, once again, fine. Zay Flowers, fine. I do like Devonta Smith. He may last to the 5-4, but I think Rashee Rice, too good of an opportunity to pass up on here. So we'll just kind of sit back, see how things progress here into the 5th round. And then once again, we could look here. There are some running backs that I think are fine here. Top tight end is TJ Hawkinson. Then we got the Mahomes, Mayfield, Bo Nix type of range at quarterback going there. So I still think we load up at wide receiver here. If you liked a wide receiver there over Rashee Rice because you're worried about like a potential suspension and or him coming off the injury, could maybe pause there and still get a piece of that Chiefs offense by going Xavier Worthy potentially here in the 5th round. But I'm high on Devonta Smith. I think he just always brings that really safe floor, great consistency. Love him as a wide receiver 3 here. And we will just move right into the 5th round. You look at the build here, Bijan, Bucky, Higgins, Rashee Rice, and Devonta Smith. Feel very good about this start. Then we just want to round out this wide receiver room with a 4th round wide receiver, unless there's just a player that I think holds way too much value here. And we look at this kind of range of wide receiver. You know, I'm not super confident in Jalen Waddle going into this year, and that's because I've been high on Waddle in the past, and I just feel like he's burnt me. Travis Hunter has some nice upside. I really kind of like the next kind of tier here: Godwin, Judy, Adunze, Ridley, even Khalil Shakir and Jacoby Myers. But some of those players could certainly last to the 7th round and potentially maybe last to the 8th round. But a player that I've been drafting a lot as a RB3 that I've targeted in a ton of drafts is DeAndre Swift. He's locked in as the RB1 for the Bears without any doubt in my mind. The offensive line has improved in the offseason. We got Ben Johnson as a head coach now. All signs are positive directions for the Bears going into the year. We have like so much hype around like players like Rome Odunze, even Caleb Williams in his sophomore season, Colston Loveland added. And I just feel like DeAndre Swift's getting left out. I'm starting to see more like content creators talk about DeAndre Swift. But if you guys have followed this channel, you guys would know I've always been a DeAndre Swift truther. He's averaged over 12 fantasy points 3 straight seasons in a row. So as like an RB3 with a lot of upside with our first 2 RBs, I like Swift a lot. So we're going to go with him there. And then you look, Hunter, Adunze, Waddle gone. Basically all those additional wide receivers that I talked about in this tier are still here. So I will go Chris Godwin because all signs are pointing towards Chris Godwin starting in week 1, being ready, coming off that injury for week 1. And you look at the pace that Chris Godwin was on before he got injured, it was absolutely ballistic. Even the game he got hurt in him, he still gave you double digits. But just don't forget, this was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver before he suffered the injury. So a really solid start here. Bijan, Bucky, Higgins, Rashee Rice, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Swift, and Chris Godwin. So feel really good about this start. And then we just want to kind of look here, like quarterbacks are still okay. I will say when you're kind of mocking with the computer, quarterback ADP is going to be pushed up a bit. But this is a point like in, this draft or this specific strategy where I would start to just keep an eye on the tight end position. Like I said, we want to let a high value tight end fall to us. I'm perfectly okay with taking Evan Engram off the board here and having Evan Engram as my tight end 1. If you guys have been following the channel throughout the offseason, I am high on the Broncos overall offense going into 2025. So love Evan Engram at this spot. Take him off the board here. And then, we have a very solid start overall. We could kind of pivot to any position that we want here. But I'll go with another wide receiver here, just continue that depth. I think we can hold off at quarterback for a little bit. But I like the upside of Ricky Pearsall quite a bit here. Get another potential flex player, players who's going to benefit from the absence of Brandon Ayuk to start the season. A player who finished last season in very good overall fashion and is going to be a big part of that offense. I do like Jawan Jennings, who went at the 9-1 as well, but I like getting a piece of that 49ers offense because I still have faith in their offense going into 2025. And then I do want to continue to just get some running back depth here. I am okay with Rachaad White in this range, but I don't really want to double dip into that Bucs offense, especially when we already have Chris Godwin. Let's try to diversify a little bit. Tajay Spears, another running back that I've talked about in this range that I still think has a lot of upside. I do like Tony Pollard, don't get me wrong, but Tajay Spears was a true league winner last year, weeks 15 through 17, had a lot of upside. I know the injury concerns, but also some of those games, weeks 15 and 16, Pollard was active as well. So I do think that Tajay Spears is a great handcuff, but he also has a lot of good standalone value. And at this point in the draft, just 3 more selections here. We could go ahead and take a quarterback off the board, and we'll do so for the purpose of the mock. We'll take Justin Fields, but just keep in mind, once again, when you're drafting with the computer, overall, you're not going to get a perfect picture of what quarterback ADP looks like. You have a lot of these teams like drafting 2 quarterbacks that if you are drafting with, real life people, like you're not going to see a lot of teams take Jaden Daniels and Dak Prescott or Lamar and Stroud. So you could kind of hold off a little bit in terms of ADP and quarterbacks, at least in terms of what I've seen from real life mocks. We could hold off a little bit longer, but I do like Justin Fields as a late round quarterback. Then for me personally, we're just kind of taking 2 dart throws to wrap up this draft. You could either finish with 4 running backs or 5 running backs here. If I was going to go with another running back, it'd be Eckler. You know what? J.K. Dobbins is here, so I'll take him. But I'll tell you guys right now, J.K. Dobbins is not going at this current ADP. He's going a bit higher. And even on Underdog, like you look at J.K. Dobbins' ADP, it's moving up a bit. People are drafting J.K. Dobbins against his ADP, which I think makes perfect sense. So maybe not the most realistic pick. I would be okay with Austin Eckler in this range if we were to go with another running back. Then you got plenty of handcuffs. Yeah, and you guys see some of them on the screen that I like as well. Ray Davis, Isaac Garando, Trey Benson, Tyler Algier. So if you want to grab a handcuff here, that's fine. If you think Evan Ingram, who dealt with some injuries last year, is a player that maybe you wanted like a second tight end behind, this is a point where you could draft a second tight end. Isaiah Likely, Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, Brenton Strange, Mike Gesicki, even Kate Otten. I'm okay with that range. Maybe not Kate Otten on this team that already has a lot of Buccaneers players. But for me, I would just continue to build depth at wide receiver because in a double flex format, full PPR, which is what a lot of leagues are kind of gravitating towards, at least from what I've seen, we want to have a lot of depth at wide receiver. And Rashad Bateman, probably my favorite late round wide receiver to target right now. Finished last year, didn't really finish last year, but just overall last year, had some really good spike weeks, still utilized in this offense, showed us what we needed to see in his 4th year with the Ravens. I know it wasn't fantastic, but you got to think this is not really a pass heavy offense. And overall, I just like his kind of upside. I believe he's the true wide receiver 2 on this team, not DeAndre Hopkins, who they added in the offseason. I know the tight ends will garner some targets as well, but it was very promising to see the Ravens go out and give him a 3-year extension. So this was a great overall draft in my mind. I will say the one other note is like you could go 2 quarterbacks here over Dobbins or Bateman if like you're kind of shaky on Justin Fields. But in my personal opinion, just draft the additional skill position players. Fight for a quarterback on the waiver wire. There are going to be guys like Matthew Stafford, like Geno Smith, that'll be out there and serviceable that you can add if Fields is a little bit shaky or whatever. But I like the upside of Justin Fields and the fact that we secured him on the roster. So generally speaking, for like quarterback, tight end, draft 1 QB, 1 tight end, fight for the waivers if we need help, right? So Justin Fields and Evan Ingram at quarterback, tight end, I think we're good there. Bijan, Bucky Irving, double hero RB approach here. DeAndre Swift's our RB3, Tajay Spears, and J.K. Dobbins on the bench. Love that. Like I said, you're probably going to have to draft J.K. Dobbins at least a round earlier, if not 2 rounds earlier, just based on what I've seen in real life mock. So bear that in mind as well. And then wide receivers look very solid to me. T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, Devonta Smith, Chris Godwin, Ricky Pearsall, and Rashad Bateman. This is a very solid team, head to toe. Feel great about this mock overall. A lot of good players did land to us. And like I said, quarterbacks can be a little bit moved around here. You could maybe even potentially run this strategy in a real life mock and come out with a quarterback who you're maybe a little bit more comfortable with. But you guys have heard me talk a lot about Justin Fields throughout the offseason, so I'm good with him, especially on this team that I think has a lot of upside, but a good blend of consistency as well. So there you guys have it. There is the best overall draft strategy from the 1.4 overall in a 12-team full PPR draft sitting going into the 2025 fantasy football season. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you guys are new to the channel, this is all we do here all year long. Free fantasy football content, redraft, dynasty, and best ball. If you guys are into that, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. But more importantly, if you guys have any fantasy football questions whatsoever, drop them in the comments down below. I'll get back to you guys as soon as I possibly can. And like I said earlier as well, don't forget, guys, we're going to have videos like this coming out from every single draft spot for 12-team leagues and 10-team leagues for the month of June, the month of July, and the month of August to make sure that we're staying up to date. And of course, keep an eye out because we do live streams with you guys where we run real life mock drafts. Make sure you guys come out, join those, have some fun, talk some fantasy football. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.